Any idea if Amir, Natalie will be joining today?
It's not for today. It's actually for Peter and Noirin, who are the co-leads of the group.
Yeah.
But Mark will also be joining as he's doing the other component of the evidence synthesis for this question. And I think Noirin is coming as well, so we'll wait a few more minutes for them all. Hi, Laura.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Noirin.
Hi, Noirin.
Hello, Noirin.
Hi, guys. How are you?
Good. You're back from holiday, Noirin?
Yes.
It was good?
Yes, it was great. I was in the Basque Country. It was wonderful. So I was following all of Aaron's advice. Yes. The summer is flying by. It's now the 11th of August, just in case you all, I hope you all had some holidays or are going soon on holidays.
Not yet for me.
Going to holidays.
Good.
So it's Mark.
Yes, he should be joining. Yeah.
Yeah, Partha, well done, and everybody well done on getting the 8 recommendations out. I'm circulating it as much as I possibly can. I've sent it to everybody I can think of who might be vaguely interested. It's wonderful I think it's wonderful just to see all the work and to share it. And then I think it also helps for lots of people who are looking at triage at the moment. And I think this is really, we're very timely. So it's just kind of saying, right, can everyone please in Ireland stop? We are going to look at what the European Commission do and they will follow that. So it's the timing is good.
It's credit goes to all of your efforts. And then, of course, Katie and Nadia putting things together.
Hi, Mark.
I see Mark is there, yeah.
Hello. Hello, everybody.
Hi, Mark.
Hi, Mark.
Hi.
Hello,
so we are all here to listen to you.
Me? Oh.
Yes. Most important person today.
Yeah.
Isn't the most important person every day? Come on, guys.
I was not psychologically prepared to lead this meeting, but yeah, I will pick up this challenge. So today we discuss triage. This means women have been identified as being high-risk HPV positive in an HPV-based screening program. And the question is, how do we triage them? We have already discussed, I think in common, all of us, on the document with the concepts and terms that we want to use. And we have also a document with the PICOS questions that has been shared and discussed. A few days ago, we received an alternative expression of the list of PICOS questions, which is shorter than the list that we discussed before, because we consider cytology triage as such and HPV genotyping as such without considering the details in the main PICOS question. But this requires that for cytology we add a star, and this star refers to cytology at cutoff ASCUS, cutoff flow cell, cutoff ASC H plus and high cell plus. And genotyping has two stars, and these 2 stars refer to limited genotyping, 16, 18 versus other, or extended genotyping, which can be summarized in 4 groups according to the carcinogenicity of the HPV types included in each group. We have the A group, which contains HPV 16. We have the B group, which contains 18 and 45. Then the C group, an intermediate group with medium levels of carcinogenicity with 31, 33, between brackets 35 and further 52, 58, which are considerably linked with cervical cancer, but not as strongly as the types in group B and C. And then we have all the others with low level of carcinogenicity.
Can I just check? I'm only seeing Mark's first slide. Are the slides moving?
No, they're not moving.
Okay.
No, they're not yet moving.
Okay, that's okay. Then that's I.
Have your slides?
I do have slides, but actually I was focusing the slides on the discussions we would have with the group from Cochrane.
Yeah.
So not on the details of the PICOs, which would be first to discuss. Well, maybe we could.
But let's consider this
Mark
as
anyway.
introduction.
No, it's good. I'm following Mark. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't looking at the wrong thing.
Thanks for your intervention, Cathy. So we are trying to handling that, and we have done systematic review work, and we will discuss at a later moment on how we can deal with that. Then there are other items related to this subgroup is, what is the acceptance, the feasibility, the cost effectiveness of different triage methods. And then we come to what the group would like to ask to the Cochrane group to handle this. And then I think we can go to the next slide. Cathy?
Yeah.
Just one short question, Mark. The question or the point I mentioned also in our last discussion about triage is whenever they do their Cochrane analysis, we do have to know whether they performed all the triage assessments within the first or second or whatever screening rounds. I think that's highly crucial, and that's an important point we have to observe and keep in mind, right?
Yes. So this is a question related to the first point here, effectiveness. We have this PPP plot, Peter, and the pretest risk will be higher in a first screening round than in a second screening round, or in a screening population with where the younger cohorts are already vaccinated with a high level of coverage or not. So this is will be handled in the first topic, but it's a very relevant question, but we can handle it by playing with the pretest risk.
Probably, yes. If we know what changes over time, certainly we do see that there are changes within the prevalence of SIN3, SIN2. It's difficult what happens with the test positives. I'm not so sure about that, whether we have those data. This is then the question in regards to not only sensitivity, but also specificity and positive predictive value, negative predictive value. And I'm not really sure whether we do have this data for the third screening round, for instance.
We have data mainly on first screening rounds, but also data coming from countries that have introduced HPV-based screening, where we have already second round data. But these data are limited. But there we have to collaborate with modeling, where we do not have the data. We have to ask the modelers to estimate, to guess what the probabilities are in this or that situation.
Okay, Background is, Mark, that we're starting January with 70,000 patients here in the greater round of Hanover to gather data for the third screening round. What has changed?
Yeah.
Okay.
Indeed. Now we come to what we will ask that Cochrane works on it. The objectives is there are two, and the first is to discuss what reviews would we need for acceptability, equity, and feasibility. And second, cost effectiveness. But let's first focus on the first one and then the second one. I see there is a question from Anna. Patty, you'll probably have the outcomes in subsequent slides.
I don't have them on these slides, but even though I can bring it up in a second, hang on. I think that the way that we're thinking about, although the outcomes are slightly different, those that are used by Mark in the meta-analysis for effectiveness, we will frame it as these are outcomes that are related to our already prioritized outcomes for PICO 1 to 6. So I think that the same outcomes that we have prioritized for all of the screening questions should apply here too. But what you will see in effectiveness is actually slightly different outcomes. Let me just bring it up on the document.
In the meanwhile, for the first objective, it says the equity acceptability. In the literature, we will find certainly surveys where women are interviewed, and often the question they have to answer is, do they prefer a very sensitive triage where specificity is not that important, where a decision for further follow-up can be made immediately? Often women prefer that in spite of the adverse effects and costs. And there is a communication issue and therefore involvement of women that understand the question and can deal with this balance between aggressive follow-up where the decision can be made immediately versus certain delayed testing which is more cost effective from an economic point of view. And equity, yeah, in opportunistic triage, we see that all types of markers are considered, and according to the understanding and the preferences of the clinicians. But yeah, where often the costs are high. So I think that this type of literature is retrievable via Medline searchings. And there we have to look a bit for what the best outcomes are. Kati?
Mm-hmm. Do you see now the outcomes here?
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe so. The starting point for the acceptability, feasibility, and equity questions has been a review of reviews that was done. Perhaps, Anna, you could just give a bit of a synopsis of that, so that could be perhaps the starting point where the rest of the group could make some advice on how it could be used to answer triage questions on these particular triage tests, if it is suffice to do that or not.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, for acceptability, I'm aware of surveys that focus on triage, and where the extremes are immediate management versus passing through an algorithm, where women have their preferences. And of course, they are not experts. They do not follow the logic of PPVs, which means they have a high risk and should be managed more aggressively. Whereas those who are triage negative, yeah, they can have a more delayed retesting. There is some literature, and if we, I repeat, often the opinion are a bit against the cost effectiveness philosophy. And I think it would be important to look for that. For me, this it's something which requires good communication. but it would be good to have a synthesis, and there is some literature on that, but I did not do any effort to do systematic searchings. Then for the cost effectiveness, there I know there are some studies, and I have in mind some from the Netherlands, where they look for outcomes which we do not consider in the yellow part, in terms of life years gained, versus the harms, more testing and anxiety over a longer time. And I think there's more literature from other countries, the Nordic countries certainly. We, in our yellow part, we will do some cost effectiveness, but it will be more effectiveness in the sense of detection of SIN3+ as an outcome versus the cost number of colposcopies, or the sum of the costs of all testing. And therefore, Cathy has collected data on the costs of all different testings, multiplied by the unit price and cumulated over an algorithm. We will be able to compute for certain countries, the number of SIN3+ detected by €1,000. But this is more a mathematical computation than the modeling of the cost effectiveness.
Yes, Laura, go for it.
So if I understood it, we are aiming for getting this computation by the outcomes we have in effectiveness, rather than a cost effectiveness study with a model that, for example, reports life year gains or qualities. Is this what we are talking about? Like, it's better to prioritize doing this computation with the outcomes already prioritized in effectiveness, or we should do a systematic review that probably will only provide results of incremental cost effectiveness analysis as euros per quality or life year gain, which is usually what we find.
I would say for the first objective, equity, acceptability, it's essentially interview-based surveys of women, sometimes among clinicians. And in the second, quality adjusted life years gained for different triage approaches, where we could look for the two extreme approaches, an aggressive approach. And the most aggressive is, we treat everybody that is HPV positive. In Europe, this is not considered. There is consensus that we always need triage. In low-income countries, it is considered. But we will focus on European literature. So if I refer to the Dutch studies, there will be some literature on triage A versus B with an outcome in terms of quality adjusted life years, which we will not have in the yellow part. And it will be not that much.
Okay, so just to inform you of what we usually find in this kind of studies, the difficulty here is that we find large models that include a lot of different algorithms, and and they don't report all the data of interest, at least for us in our PICO questions. So we have to contact them, and sometimes they respond, sometimes they don't. This is the main difficulty we find with the systematic reviews, just to inform you.
Kathy?
Yeah, I just wanted to follow on from that, because if we ask Laura that for every one of these PICO questions where there is a different intervention with the comparator of cytology triage, to do a cost effectiveness analysis for each of these, this can be very time consuming. And perhaps I also wanted to raise whether it would be possible to consider a more efficient way where if many of the experts have said that the nuances in which triage you use doesn't make a huge impact on the cost effectiveness and long-term outcomes. It is simply the fact of having a triage itself that is the more significant contributor to those outcomes. In that case, would it be possible to consider that for cost effectiveness, you would just look at the cost effectiveness of triage versus not triage, and then use those estimates for all of the different triages? And then with your more specific outputs, Mark, to each of the different tests, that would also supplement that part of the resources and cost effectiveness section. Just because, one, following from what Laura said, they may not have data on all of these specific triage combinations, and two, it would be very time consuming for Laura to do 8 systematic reviews.
No.
Cost effective, yeah.
I would look for triage as such, and look for the most aggressive, you treat all, versus a more conservative, where you go 2 triage cycles or even more, and where we have the feasibility part of the probability that women will come back for all these next cycles of triage. And we can give you the triage algorithms for all European countries we have. And we see that certain countries are very conservative. It means before they release a patient, they go up to 3-4 cycles of triage. And this requires a lot of costs for a small benefit. And this would be good to have as substance to discuss the feasibility. We will have in part 1, which we will cover, we will have the pros and the cons, the detection of SIN3+ over time versus the costs that we compute directly, and combine this in a simple algebraical sum to obtain costs. But we do not address the feasibility. And I think one of the feasibility elements is the compliance with follow-up. And our Australian colleagues have a lot of work done on this. If you want, I can bring you into contact to their work. Australia is comparable to Europe. They have done modeling work on this, and I think we can borrow from them. I see Laura and Peter. Laura?
Yes, I was wondering, I had a terminology question. The aggressive or conservative, or the intense versus the basic. Does this mean, like, because I've seen terms like reflex triage and delay triage every 6-month period, for example. Is this what we are talking about?
For me, aggressive means that you try to be very sensitive at the reflex level.
Okay.
And that you come to a decision, madam, you must go to further follow-up, have colposcopy and biopsy, or you go back to screening.
Okay.
This is aggressive. And more conservative is, that we say to women, we do not need to follow you up immediately. Your reflex testing is not yielding sufficiently high risks. Nevertheless, you still have a risk and you have to come back at least one or even more times. This is conservative.
Okay.
And there, I think it's very pertinent to have your result of your reviewing work on this. As a philosophy, we have to deal with what women want and what is best from a cost effectiveness point of view.
We will then probably have to follow up on what interventions we find and how we can classify them
Right.
to be compared in each of the studies. But we can do that. And also, if I took my notes right, then we would do a kind of computation with each of the types of triage testing, but apart from the systematic review, right?
You probably have to take a few examples, very aggressive, very conservative, and something intermediate.
Okay.
And make a strategic choice and not go to all our 14 PICOS questions, which we have proposed up to now. Peter?
Yeah, I think that is highly complicated and very sophisticated. So we just have to make it somehow a little bit easier. Because I mean, we have to then categorize whether an approach or triage approach is aggressive or whether it's more conservative. I would just see it another way around. If we have a triage algorithm, which is more or less two-tiered or that has two steps, then it's quite simple that those women who are HPV positive, they have to undergo then a triage test and perhaps a second triage test and a third triage test, yes? So with each triage testing, we have another level of interaction between patients or women, clients, and the system. And that makes it very difficult due to these different triage steps, and we may face a loss of follow-up.
Yes.
So my suggestion would be, it's a one-tiered approach? Is this a one-step approach? Is it a two-step approach or a three-steps approach? I think that's much easier than to compare with each other. I think that there are hardly any data for that. I'm only aware of data comparing self-sampling with clinician-based sampling and comparing these two approaches with the question of equity, acceptability, and feasibility. And we can use then the clinician-based arm to get data for the question we have here. And then also separate it whether it's a one-step, two steps, or three steps approach. Actually, it would be good to at least get the knowledge what is the loss to follow up with one step or two steps or three steps. So according to complexity, everything else is whether it's intense or not intense. I think yeah, I don't know. We will not get a clear picture, and it's very difficult for those who have to retrieve the literature and make some algorithm or some calculations out of it. So keep it stupid and simple. That's what I have to suggest.
Yeah. So if I understand you well, Peter, first, thanks for your suggestion. You propose to focus on something which is more concrete than the general viewpoint that I outlined is, as it is written here, is one-step triage more feasible than multi-step. And we look for opinions, clinicians and women, and otherwise we look also at the loss to follow up at the level of T2 triage and T3 triage.
Yeah, I think that's a way to approach this issue. And when you find a couple of publications data for that, then it's fine. And at the end of the day, you know, we just started with let's say HPV testing, then HPV is positive. And what comes next? The next is pap testing. Pap testing will give you the answer whether we go for, let's say, the colposcopy. All the new triage methods, they're much more complicated. And I'm afraid there will be a loss to follow-up, and the loss to follow-up is more or less similar to a lower acceptability. Yeah.
Yeah. I think this is a good proposal to make things more concrete. And it is nice to document these follow-up compliance, which are often modeled by the Australians, but they are guesses, but there are some data in the literature. And we can also ask our partners to look for that, to provide some data.
Yeah.
Kati, you wanted to say something?
I just I really like the addition of loss to follow-up being in there for the triage specifically, but how can we incorporate, I mean, it would be considered an outcome, right? And I just wanted to say, where should we add it? And is it associated with one of our existing outcomes, or do we need to consider it a new outcome?
It is not considered in the yellow part. For me, this is an indicator for feasibility.
Yeah.
And I like what Peter has said about that. That makes it easier for Cochrane to focus on something. And I would find this useful to look for. So you can have the best triage algorithm, but and finally, just 20% comes to the end of the cycle. Our triage is not very feasible. In the Australians who did modeling work, but this was with focus on the whole world, with in particular focus on lower middle income countries, they considered 2 or 3 levels of compliance. One was about 80%, and the other one was 40%. Maybe there was a third one at 20% or so. And the more cycles you are, the higher the harder it is to assure your compliance. And this decreases your cost effectiveness, of course. But having some real data on compliance is very useful to look for.
Laura?
I was wondering if this should be also the approach to follow in cost effectiveness, or I don't know, you would be interested in adding probably the test or I don't know, just wondering.
Yeah, we did not include it. We could have included it, but I found that we had already sufficient weight on our scale. But yeah, patients that are lost to follow up, yeah, compromises the effectiveness. Of course, they do not consume the further testing efforts. And yeah, the Australians have some best guesses on that. So they can bring into contact with them and they can provide you with Australian data or other data that they have used to incorporate compliance with follow-up.
Okay, great. We have already some algorithm-based studies mapped. The suggestion I can make is just try to at least have some detail around them to see if something would be of interest, apart from comparing one-step triage versus more, which I think, like the question is so simple, it will be hard to answer that exactly. So maybe just have a proxy of that information, or I don't know, just to figure it around the evidence available, which would be the most informative studies or results, because this is kind of like what we have found in the previous systematic reviews. We have tried to map these studies in a broader sense to know more or less what was out there, and it's complex because every study tries to answer a very specific question for a very specific setting, and sometimes just framing them into articles can be challenging. So if I may suggest that, like doing a follow-up of the studies we have mapped already, it's a little bit of work for us, and it might be more useful for the panel overall to see that information.
Yeah. Yeah, it would be good to see what you have already mapped. It can be done by email, and I can give you feedback on this.
That would be great. Yeah.
Okay.
So Laura and Anna, would there need to be, is the next step that you would be drafting protocols for this component of these questions, or for this group to review and the subgroup to review, or what would be the next step after this meeting now?
Anna? I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
That would be really great. Yeah.
Indeed.
Yeah, a similar approach for cost effectiveness as well. We would draft a general protocol to be as overarching as possible in terms of what we are finally going to include. It might vary a little bit, so maybe not drafting very specific inclusion and exclusion criteria. And then this mapping of studies, not very thorough, and maybe we can select those that we would want more thorough mapping or more detailed mapping, and go for go more deeper into those studies later.
Okay. Okay. We would be very grateful for that. And as soon as you have this, I can have a look at it, and together with Kathy and Tatiana, and with you, Peter, and with Gordon from Ireland, we can give you feedback. And I think that you have understood what we have tried to suggest to you. So thanks a lot for that.
Mhm.
Can we return to your PowerPoint, Kathy?
Sure.
Our meeting is planned to end at what time?
Well, it's in 10 minutes.
Okay. So this slide we have completed, and we have incorporated a suggestion of Peter.
Yeah.
Thanks for that. Then cost effectiveness.
I think that we have the.
We have covered the two items, cost effectiveness and feasibility, equity.
Exactly. I'm just going to delete these because they're not relevant.
Yeah.
And
This is an example of cost effectiveness, but
sorry.
the outcomes are expressed in something which we can observe in our studies included in meta-analysis. It is detection of SIM3+. It is not the life years gained or quality adjusted life years gained. And there will be not much literature, but probably there is some literature on this. And if you do not find, I will connect you with Australians who certainly can bring up something which is generic and also relevant for Europe. Okay, then I think we have covered the agenda, isn't it, Kathy?
We have. Yes, thank you very much.
So if there are other, Partha still has an...
Mark, if I remember correctly, Kim from Harvard, she also had this cost effectiveness analysis by different triaging options. Do you know her? I can put you with
Kim, yes.
Yep, Kim Jen.
From Harvard, yes.
That can also be useful.
Yeah. Jane Kim.
J-A-N-E.
Jane.
Sorry, the
Kim
other way?
is the family name and Jane is the first name.
Okay, sorry.
No,
J-A-N-E.
Oh,
The first
sorry.
name.
And there has been also modeling in the German context. As you may remember, Mark, when we drafted our first German guidelines for cervical cancer prevention, which was done by the modeling group in Innsbruck. However, this is published only in the internet, I think in German language. Unfortunately, they did not publish it in English. And it's also concerning the question cost effectiveness of different modelings and different triage. But I submitted it. I submitted the internet link to you already.
But maybe you can. Yeah. Did you capture it, Patty? The internet link from Peter?
Yeah, we were. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thanks. Okay. We can look for contact with the Australians and with Kim, and then maybe also with the German or the Austrian cost-effectiveness modelers. It included triage, Peter?
Yeah, well, it was
more
a couple of
screening,
years.
huh?
Yeah, it was a couple of years ago, and we did not model the new and the modern triage algorithm like genotyping. This is quite challenging, using the various types of extended and full genotyping within the modeling. I mean, this is really challenging because that's rather new. And we did not do this at that time. According to I know, we used, I think, dual stain. We used, compared it to pub testing and what else? Yeah, but not genotyping, methylation, not at all. So, but this will be a challenge to find new modelings with extended genotypings. I mean, they're going along with the Danish and the Swedish and the implementation of screening.
Yeah, but if you could have a further look on this, Peter, and point to the triage options that are included there, that would be useful.
Okay.
Yeah. Something general for our Cochrane colleagues. I refer again to the Australian work. When we look at the cost effectiveness, and we have the whole screening and triage pathway, even including treatment, then we see that the space in the cost effectiveness curve plot is quite wide if we compare the different screening options. 3-yearly cytology versus 5-year screening are far away from each other, and 5-year screening is more cost effective. If we look at all the triage details in the same cost effectiveness plotting, we see that they are all concentrated in a quite small space, which allow us to conclude, the cost effectiveness of the different triage options is not so huge, and we can accept certain local preferences, taking into account the costs and the skills available in countries. And this is a very universal conclusion. And I can help you with bringing you in contact with Australians. So by this, if there are no further remarks, we could close the session. Okay, then thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we keep in touch. See you. Bye-bye.
See you. Bye.
Mark, do you want to
Bertha
stay?
and Peter,